and that was shown in a very nice way, saying that that's because we don't know about each other. That means we don't know about each other's culture. That's
That was all. That was the message.
yeah, and so it was a lovely message. That means we should get to know each other's cultures. I mean, we should have our own culture, but also we should start getting to know. So film or PSA, like it was a PSA, not a commercial, public service announcement. Rather, PSAs would and could do a lot of communications through. That is one way of visual communications. I think I have taken cinema into visual communications here rather than talking about cinema. So this is one way of communicating and one way of understanding we as Sri Lankans instead of we individuals. So I mean, there are many other ways. I mean, right now, I think when we also push too much, like you are a Sinhalese, you are a Tamil, you are a burger also, I think it's getting a little scary, because you don't need to do that as Sri Lankans. I mean, it should be able to function that way, and they should be able to function that way instead of trying to point out too much. I think that's also like you're trying to show something you don't need to bring up, but you try to bring it up, and then it becomes a problem. So you have to walk in a thin line when you talk about human conflicts in that
So I
context.
guess, like as you are saying and proposing, to talk about it in a thin line, I think this visual medium, cinema, and things like even public service messages can be extremely powerful, isn't it? Because if we go to say and pronounce the so-called words like Sinhalese, Tamil, burgers, it will be like harsh, and it will be like throwing it in your face.
Yes.
But cinema and visual images, do you think, because the visual is so powerful sometimes, that it can very subtly and diplomatically play a part in the process of reconciliation?
I think so. I believe so. I mean, yeah. That's. You can start with little things like you can put, if you take like a student movie and you put you put for an example, you take bunch of kids from the south and take them to north and say you make a movie about how you perceive the life in the north, and then you take a bunch of kids from the north and put them in south and say how you perceive, show it in your little film, like 5-minute movie or whatever. It will be very interesting. I mean, there will be things that they see, things that we sort of totally don't even concentrate on, and we will see things that they even, people from the south might see things that they don't even really, don't even take very seriously, because this always, the other is very interesting and to see. And for example, we don't use that much geckos in our movies. There are a lot of geckos, hunas, and if you use them in your movies, for people from another country, it's like very curious. Wow, what are these two animals doing, or whatever, blah blah blah. So these kind of things are very interesting. So this is sort of the equation that applies for different people to break boundaries and come together, I think.
Now that again brings us to a very important point, because Boodi, you are known to be a filmmaker that sort of cross and go beyond boundaries and sort of breaks the norms. And I think when you first also entered cinema with Sihina Deshing, the style you employed was also very different to the style you employed in Milla Soya, right? Or whether there was an evolution from that. So my question is that because you are known to be unique and also to exploit the structure and the theme and the metaphors that are usually there, based on the issue, do you sort of play with the style? Is there a relationship with the style and the issue?
How does totally, because you see, I don't like to make the same movie again, but filmmakers are known, they have a little bit of themselves in the movie, but that's fine. But if you take Stanley Kubrick, he made Spartacus, then he made 2001 and Space Odyssey, and then he made Clockwork Orange, then he made Shining with Jack Nicholson, then he made Full Metal Jacket, which is a war movie, Barry Lyndon. You know, these are all very, very different movies to each other. And I like to do movies like that because for me, making a movie is actually a learning process. I learn a lot about what went on during the final battle in Sri Lanka. When I make Martha, that's one thing I understand, and how people from each side were behaving and what kind of conflicts were going on. Just like that, when I was making Miller's Way, I came across real people who were like had to go through this process of illegally immigrating to other countries, and that was quite an interesting process. Everybody went through a very different process, but it's the same experience. One may be going through inside a container, and another may be going inside somebody's booth of a car, but then somebody might be hidden in a ship, but it was always hidden or something. Just the experience is similar. So I always like to choose different styles. I don't want to be in the same style again. Maybe my camera angles would be similar, but still my presentation and a lot of things that I work with and do is different, and maybe the story is different. I don't know.
So when you're also employing the music score and then the lighting and all the other aspects of the cinema, how do you sort of, as a film director and the filmmaker, how do you all bring all these components together to drive a point across?
For me, it's very important, the human relationship. Just like how important for me to work with a person that I like. For example, I can give you a very good example, two examples actually. In Milleswaya, my good friend Pepe Dancoart, who was here on a tour recently, which I am very sorry I couldn't meet him, because actually I invited him and then we could meet. I was in North making the movie, and then he was here, an Academy Award winning filmmaker from Germany. And when I was visiting Pepe in Germany, Pepe was mentioning, I was mentioning to Pepe, like, this was like somewhere around 98 or something. Pepe, I still haven't found a composer for my movie. Then he said, all right. And he was seated with another producer from another country, and he was friends with one of the composers of Emir Kusturica, who's another well-known director, who did Underground and Time of the Gypsies and all those. So then Pepe was telling me, okay, write down this number. And he gave me country code 44 and blah, blah, blah. And I was like asking, who's that? He said, Brian Eno. I'm like, oh my God, Brian Eno, the producer of U2. I'm one of my heroes. And I'm like, oh, Pepe, what do I tell him? Like, I'm like shaking now. Or you tell him that I gave you this number and you call him and talk to him about this movie. He's a friend of mine. He was in my movie also. Blah, blah. If he likes the project, he'll do it. And actually I did call, and the phone rang, and when it was like hello, I just got so scared and hung up the phone. So that was like thinking too big, I thought. I was looking at a giant and looking at
but it's
a
not
hero.
hard for you, because you started thinking as Einstein, isn't it?
Yeah. But then I come to Italy, and then I meet another person who's been a producer of Gypsy Kings. He had produced either a couple of albums or whole one album for Gypsy Kings, and I met him